morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. I'm the Reverend Monica Dobbins, the assistant minister of this congregation, and it is my joy to welcome you here today, especially if you are new or visiting here. You are welcome. Many of us have movies that we have seen so many times that we feel like we can quote every line. For me, that movie is The Princess Bride. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. Do yourself a favor. You will be so happy. In it, the lovely maiden Buttercup falls in love with the poor, handsome farm boy Wesley, but is kidnapped and forced to marry the evil Prince Humperdinck. Despite Wesley's heroic effort to save Buttercup, the wedding goes on. Humperdinck has arranged for both Buttercup and Wesley to be murdered, yet he seems to know that death cannot stop true love, and that Wesley will always come for his princess. As he senses that the heroes are closing in on the hasty wedding, Humperdinck shouts at the officiant, "Man and wife! Say man and wife!" as though those words are what make people married. Now, I don't know about you, but my own marriage is less like that of Wesley and Buttercup and more like that of Valerie and Miracle Max, the crotchety old couple who provide the heroes with a life-saving concoction to bring the mostly dead hero back to life in time to stop the wedding. Ours is a marriage with lots of good-natured insults and name-calling and the occasional chase around the dining room table. And once in a while, we pull together to create miracles that just might work. Every marriage is unique, and there is no fairy tale formula for making them work, although, as Valerie and Max say, chocolate does help it to go down easier. There are so many ways to be married or otherwise committed for life that I'm reminded of the words we often use here on Sunday mornings about the infinite possibilities of love. Today we celebrate those possibilities. Love surround us. Love protect us. Love set us free. And now I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and let us sing together number 38, Morning Has Broken.
Say think we all love Monica's enthusiasm, even if it means canceling out the introit. Yeah. Yeah. We wanted Monica to shake things up around here, and she certainly has. You know, I love the old fairy tales, which so many of them carry the common storyline, and it holds a very poignant message. And I'm referring to the stories in which the one who has turned into a beast can only regain human form through someone else's love. And so here, I think, is the clue to love. Love is what makes us more human. A source of life and love, we give thanks for all the blessings that are ours. We stand in awe of the gift of love. It is what makes us human, what enables us to live more deeply, and to provide that certain magic that sustains us. We are, therefore we love. We love, therefore we are. Love is the gift that heals and holds us. It can renew us, revive us, and transform us. Love comes as a gift outside ourselves, upon which we are ultimately dependent upon for our humanity. Love finds us apart from merit or manipulation. It blesses us with the power of forgiveness, creates new chances, and makes visible the beauty of holiness. But love also has a power beyond our control. I will always remember the following true story, which came as a cryptic news story out of Czechoslovakia quite some years ago. Prague, July 7th. Vera Cermak jumped out of her third-story window last night when she learned that her husband, Franz, was seeing another woman. Mrs. Cernak is recovering in the hospital with severe fractures after landing on her husband, who was killed. Love is always so unpredictable. Amen.
This morning's reading comes from Belgian psychotherapist Esther Perel, whose life's work is in studying intercultural differences in marriage and in helping married couples recover from infidelity and other relationship crises. What is true for human beings is true for every living thing. All organisms require alternating periods of growth and equilibrium. Any person or system exposed to ceaseless novelty and change risks falling into chaos, but one that is too rigid or static ceases to grow and eventually dies. This never-ending dance between change and stability is like the anchor and the waves. Adult relationships mirror these dynamics all too well. We seek a steady, reliable anchor in our partner, yet at the same time, we expect love to offer a transcendent experience that will allow us to soar beyond our ordinary lives. The challenge for modern couples lies in reconciling the need for what's safe and predictable with the wish to pursue what's exciting, mysterious, and awe-inspiring. It is not that our human insecurity is greater today than in earlier times. In fact, quite the contrary may be true. What is different is that modern life has deprived us of our traditional resources and has created a situation in which we turn to one person for the protection and emotional connections that a multitude of social networks used to provide. Adult intimacy has become overburdened with expectations. We bring to our romantic relationships an almost unbearable existential vulnerability, as if love itself weren't dangerous enough. Many of the people in the West at this moment are going to have 2 or 3 marriages in their lifetime, and some of us are going to do it with the same person. Sometimes, an affair or other crisis is the end of a marriage, the one that people knew for 10, 15, 25 years, and then the question is, do you want another one together? Do you want to create a different relationship with each other? Do you have enough between you in terms of life, capital, history, shared values, love, care, attention, family, that says, I don't want to leave this? And that means that the crisis will often light up the scorecard in a relationship, the compromises people make for the greater good, the arrangements, the roles they took on, the power structures that they accepted, the financial arrangements. You can renegotiate the entire thing. People develop resiliency and hope. It says to people, this is a big crisis, but you can repair and repair.
Roses whose beauty is
Well, a warm welcome to all of you this morning, especially if you are here for the very first time. I'd like to recommend that following this service, you stop off at a welcoming table, which is a welcoming place, and get a little more familiar with what goes on here in this very exciting congregation. The announcements are always kind of a barometer of what gets the church going and what keeps it ticking. So please, all of you, get familiar with all the announcements here of some very special events that are coming right around the corner. Let me just mention just a couple of things that have not made it to the announcement page. First of all, here we are in day 12 of providing sanctuary for a tremendous family from Honduras. And things have really settled down as almost, well, not quite routine yet, but we're certainly working in that direction. Really good vibes all around. Things are going exceptionally well. And probably the primary reason why things are going so well is that we have literally over 200 volunteers that are helping with the sanctuary movement. So obviously, yeah, I want to say thank you to the 200. After the service, if you would like to stop by the environmental ministry table, they are going to help and guide you in sending a special Valentine to Representative Chris Stewart. I think it's going to be a very earthy kind of message that you're going to be sending. So if you want to find out how you can express your Valentines to Representative Stewart, stop by the environmental ministry table. Also want to point out that sometime in late October, early November, I began a aging and spirituality class. And wouldn't you know it, that class was interrupted because the minister broke his kneecap during that time, which was both an exercise in aging and spirituality at the same time. So now, with fingers crossed, we're going to offer aging and spirituality once again. And we're going to do it a little differently this time, with the help of my wife, Mary Tull. She will facilitate aging and spirituality for the women in the group, and I'll be facilitating aging and spirituality for men. This is going to start, we're going to do this in the month of March. The women will be meeting 4 Thursdays in March in the afternoon, so we can get some women who really prefer not to drive at night. They'll be meeting from 2 to 3:30 in the Haven. Please sign up after the service. There are a couple of spots left, but don't worry. There's a waiting list on the back, and we promise that we will do this again either late summer, early fall, but we will really do this. And for the men, it's on a Monday, 4 Mondays in March from 1 to 2:30, also in the Haven. Please sign up if you wish to take that particular program. I think it's pretty good. One last announcement, a reminder, believe it or not, it's only 3 weeks away. 3 weeks from today will be Celebration Sunday, which will be when we truly celebrate this church and kick off our pledge drive for the 2018-2019 budget year. And we have as a very special guest for that occasion, it's going to be Lily Eskelson. Now, some of you will remember Lily Eskelson from way back when she was just a humble 6th grade teacher here in the Utah area, and then she became Teacher of the Year, and then she became president of UEA, and she's a climber. She's now president of the National Education Association, NEA, and I know many of you who are relatively new to this congregation would know Lily as president of NEA. It's really an honor to have her here with us. I think she may take us down a bit of a sentimental path, but also challenge us in terms of, at least her perspective, what is really going on in this country and the need for liberal institutions, not just liberal churches, but all liberal institutions, to really hang there together and be wise and strong. So look forward to that 3 weeks from today. The offering will now gratefully be received, a chance to greet one another and offer each other, if you dare, a happy Valentine's Day. I've been searching for the fundamental truths about marriage for a long time. Now, as a man of the cloth, I ought to know such things. After all, Catholic priests and LDS bishops claim that they know everything there is to know about marriage. Why does it have to be so perplexing for Unitarians? I've been interested in the multi-textures of marriage ever since I officiated my first wedding in 1974. I was living in Cambridge, and the bride was my hairstylist, which shows you just how long ago that really was. She and her fiancé decided to marry at midnight on the spring equinox. It was just the three of us. You didn't need witnesses in Massachusetts. The wedding took place in their home, which reminded me of the Addams family house, equal to its eerie and haunted vibe. They handed me a camera and asked me to be their photographer as well, as they moved into various erotic poses. I thought the ministry was going to be an interesting profession in one way. In all these years, I've never worked harder for my wedding fee, nor sweated quite that much. Of course, I remember the deep relief when it was all over. But before the evening was truly over, I realized that finding a new hairstylist would be my top priority. That first wedding launched my serious inquiry into the many facets of love and marriage. What do people hope for in a marriage? What are their expectations of a marriage, especially over a long period of time? What role does love actually play? Do people understand love's price and its limits? Anyway, what did I know back then at the age of 25? Today, nearly 1,300 weddings later, more than 1,100 officiated in Salt Lake alone, I'm still as baffled as ever about discovering a fundamental truth or two about marriage. And I figure that by this time I ought to be an expert when you consider not only the number of ceremonies in my barrel, but all the counseling sessions that preceded. The many years, however, have given me some wisdom about drawing some limitations to the ceremony. For example, I refuse to ski backwards while officiating a wedding ceremony. I refuse to conduct a ceremony while on a horse. I refuse to stand at the very edge of a rock off a high cliff at Capitol Reef National Park on a very windy day. I refuse to be picked up by the groom in his single-engine plane to be flown down to Moab. No, I don't do single-engine planes. I consider myself a romantic at heart, but there are certain boundaries beyond which I will not tread. But if anything, I've learned that love means different things at different points in our lives. I've learned that anything you might say about love is probably true, and the opposite will also be true. Love is beautiful, but it can also surprise us as a potentially destructive force. Thomas Hardy gave fair warning about love, claiming it is dangerous and may hang you. Dorothy Parker once said with a straight face, "Love is a thing that can never go wrong, and I am the Queen of Sheba." A couple of things we may know for sure. Love in all its myriad shades is at the core of human existence, and is also the basis of all human pursuits. I mean, it could be a pursuit of self-love, love of God, love of country, love of sex, love of another human being, whatever. Love is an essential aspect of the whole human experience, and yet it is so confounding. Although falling hopelessly shy of attaining any fundamental truths about love and marriage, I want to take at least a stab at what I have observed, personally experienced, and kind of studied for more than 40 years. Perhaps it's just a hopeless exercise, but being so close to Valentine's, we may be giving it some more thought than otherwise. Over a span of some considerable time, where I've had the privilege of celebrating couples who decide to marry, I've noted how the art of courtship has changed through the many years. When I began my ministry, it was assumed that you would find a mate either in school or at a bar. And I think neither was optimal, since people were afraid to graduate before snaring a mate, preferring to settle rather than possibly face a lifetime alone. And finding true love at a bar was always suspect. How clearly were you thinking, really? But oddly, it's been my experience that for some unexplainable reason, people with lofty college degrees and enviable professional lives have no qualms about telling their stories of meeting at a bar. I had one couple just recently, both high-level attorneys. They just implored me to be sure that I made it clear in their ceremony that they met not only at a bar the Lower East Side of Manhattan, but that the bar was really seedy and decadent and disgusting. They were an interesting couple. I guess they wanted to leave it to the imagination of their guests about why they had wandered into the bar in the first place. They wanted to make a statement, I think, or, get some message across to their parents. I don't know. I remember the era where couples first met online. It was a new experience, thanks to the internet, but it was treated like a dark secret. I was to tell no one. And I would remember sitting with just, many, many couples saying, "Well, how did you meet?" And just panic went over their faces. My God, do we need to disclose to this minister how we met? And in a shameful manner, I said, "Online." And I said, "That's okay, really. It's better than a bar, isn't it?" But it was like an admission of failure. And then meeting online became the norm. And we joked about Cupid finding his way now through cyberspace. And nowadays, not only has the couple met online, but the chances are very high that one of their parents has met a new spouse online as well. Facebook has become invaluable, especially connecting old high school sweethearts after many years, even decades, after going their separate ways. And with all this technology at our disposal, affecting all generations, one would think that the course of love would certainly run more smoothly. But somehow it doesn't. Although any fundamental truth about marriage escapes me, I am nonetheless trying to piece together what some of the pitfalls of marriage might really look like. You know, it's interesting. The Buddhists say there are 121 states of consciousness. Of these, only 3 involve misery and suffering. Yet, isn't it odd that most of us spend most of our time moving back and forth among these 3? I wonder how closely the 3 states of misery are tied to love and marriage. Makes you wonder. My exploration into this complex subject actually began, it goes way back during my undergraduate days when I majored in social psychology. And we learned then about what was called the human potential movement, which was only about, it was still pretty new, it was about a dozen years old at the time. And the movement, together with humanistic psychology as practiced by Carl Rogers, made it their mission to enhance self-esteem. It was all about pumping you up, human potential. Go and realize your potential. There was also Abraham Maslow, who aimed to liberate and enlarge the self. Maslow's huge influence at the time, and it still captures the imagination of many today, was his famous hierarchy of needs. In this conception, we start out trying to satisfy our physical needs like hunger or thirst. Once those are satisfied, we move up to safety needs and economic and physical security. And once those are satisfied, we can move up to social needs like belonging and love. And once those needs are met, we move up yet again to what he calls self-esteem, which implies dignity, mastery, an independent life. And then the very next step, which represented the very, very top, is what he calls self-actualization. The mantra of the me decade in the 70s and 80s. It hasn't quite gone away yet. It's about striving to become everything that we are capable of becoming. Wow. The expectation in marriage is often the hope that our spouse will help us in becoming more self-actualized. Or as Tom Cruise put it in the film Jerry Maguire, to become the me I always wanted to be. And we seek a partner who will do just that for us. Now, it could certainly be mutual. You know, I'll help you be all that you can be if you help me with the same. But here is where we may run into a bit of trouble. I mean, self-actualization is great, but we also want our partner to make us feel loved and valued. So the two goals are often incompatible. To make us feel loved and valued, our partner must convey appreciation for the person we currently are. To help us grow, he or she must emphasize the discrepancy between that person and the person we can ideally become. So you really can't spur your partner on without casting a critical eye on his or her faults. The skill set that makes somebody effective in nurturing is often quite different from the skill set that makes somebody effective in motivation moving them to who they ultimately want to be. But then the question comes down to, do you really want to fix the person you love and change them into somebody else? Let me give you an extreme example. A Hungarian swimmer, and I'll spare you the Hungarian name because I'll just botch it up. This woman underperformed in the 2012 Olympics and went home without a medal. Her boyfriend then became her coach. He was ferocious and uncompromising. He would publicly upbraid her for her subpar performances, sometimes kicking in a wall to underscore his great disappointment. In the 2016 Olympics, she won 3 gold medals and a silver. She credits his demanding tactics for her success. They're now married. Now, that may have worked for them, who knows? But for the rest of us, we need to decide if we want criticism rather than warmth, harshness rather than comfort. It's hard to imagine how coaching this swimmer with Gestapo-like tactics could also make her feel valued, loved, even sexy. I sometimes have a problem distinguishing the actualized self from narcissism, self-absorption, egotism. Now, surely the Buddhists would classify egotism as belonging to the 3 states of consciousness that brings us misery. I would speculate that the ego is often problematical in marriage when fundamentally the premise of a marriage is relational. Don't get me wrong. A strong sense of self is vitally important, as our self-love, self-esteem, and self-confidence. But how? How does one balance this constructively when in a relationship? Getting one's needs met are goals to which many, many people subscribe. But then there's also a knowing of how to give affection and sympathizing with one's partner. Simply building up the ego, one would think, does not lead to a fulfilling marriage necessarily for either spouse. Too much self-concern pulls us away from the other, which then does not really bode well in a marriage. I think the Buddhists would claim that as you diminish the ego, the easier you will find it roaming in the other 118 states of consciousness that bear little or no stress. A road hazard, then, en route to a satisfying marriage, seems to revolve around the push-pull of realizing goals to help one become the person he or she always wanted to be, and the need to nurture and attend one's partner as he or she presently is. The right balance is not always easy to attain. And I tell you, if you have small children, forget about self-actualization. It's off the table completely. They're good at that. They want to be actualized. But don't get me wrong. We can still live very fulfilling lives in a marriage, even when the focus shifts from me to us. It's a big transition. From me to us. And I mentioned that in a premarital counseling session just this week. And the bride said in all candor, I don't know how to do that. This is not a failing, I told her. That's one of the greatest challenges in a marriage. It's a process. It's going from me to us as a process that takes enormous learning, trust, love, and even some skill. Now, I certainly believe that all of us are experts in relationships, but also befuddled by them. I mean, I can look at a marriage as two people helping the other get self-actualized, master his or her vocation, be on top of the game. But then there's another view of being partners, melding into the same unit, which takes all you have to achieve. Giving to the other and receiving from the other. The same dichotomy as altruism and selfishness. You know, these dichotomies can fade away because in giving to the unit, you are giving to a piece of yourself, too. So using a theological term for just a moment, it's like transcending the self by connecting so deeply with another that the ego, for all intents and purposes, kind of just begins to melt away, begins to diminish. And for some, that's the goal. For others, that's a frightening prospect, to be so absorbed in the coupleness in a relationship. It's got to be a balance. I want to conclude with the words of St. John of the Cross, a Spaniard, a Catholic, a priest, and mystic. He sums it up in a way that resonates with me. In the evening of life, he said, we shall be judged on love alone. You should sit with that for a moment. In the evening of life, we shall be judged on love alone. So I guess he would have had very little use for Abraham Maslow and the human potential movement. But his are helpful words. I think when conflict arises in a marriage, conflict between fulfilling the self and contributing to the relationship, I think that this Catholic priest is recommending that, bottom line, we would be better served when surrendering to love. Because in the evening of life, we shall be judged on love alone. He may be right. After all, he had the fundamental truths about marriage all figured out. He was a Catholic priest, after all, so he knew. Let's turn our hymn books, please, to number 299. Because our value as human beings is a gift, we don't have to prove ourselves, only to express ourselves. What a world of difference there is between proving ourselves and expressing ourselves. Amen. really are a rock star. Thank you, David. So let us break for coffee and conversation. A quick reminder, the welcoming table, signing up for Aging and Spirituality, and the environmental ministry table. Thanks all for being here this morning.